Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Hi, Colleen.
Good morning,
Morning.
afternoon, evening for some of you.
Wherever you're joining us from or listening from later. Colleen, did you get your technology figured out?
This light isn't working.
Yeah, it looks like you're
This whole side of my face
a little
is
shaded in. Well, we are glad to be here, per usual, with everybody. This is, if you're watching this later, is a recording from our distance Reiki share that we have every Tuesday morning. We'd love for you to join us live if you're able to. You're able to be anonymous. We do usually have about 100 people here, so just to give you an idea of, how many people you don't see, that if you're watching the recording, so you are able to stay anonymous if you would like. I think really the only announcement that we have is that Colleen is teaching a Karuna class in May. So Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki Master Class, May 17th through the 19th. And then at the end of May, the beginning of June, she's teaching, or her and I are teaching, the 29th and 30th, Reiki 1 and 2. And then she's teaching Reiki Master the 31st through June 2nd. So of course, go to reikilifestyle.com to find out the details and register. If you have any questions about Karuna Reiki, definitely email us. It's an amazing class. So I think that's it for the announcements. Yeah. Okay. We don't have Danny here to confirm. So, all right. So what we are talking about today, we have been kind of leading up to this. We're going to be talking about some business things, and we have a lot of requests for this subject, and of all, pretty consistently. We know that not everybody that joins us here live or is listening later is looking to have a Reiki business, although you never know. Many of our stories started out, Colleen's included, that we got Reiki not knowing that we would ever want a Reiki business, and it just called to us. And so we ended up with a Reiki business. So we know because of that, we weave in Reiki business practices here and there, but we don't ever really focus on it a whole lot, other than the kind of higher aspects of a Reiki business that can be extrapolated out to so many different things, even if it's just your own personal practice, which is what we have been kind of doing over the last month to 6 weeks. But in May, we are going to be talking about this topic because it is a question that gets asked a lot around it. And the other aspect of it is that we know that there's so much information about starting any small business, starting a Reiki business, and there's only so much that we can fit in the time frame that we have. Also, that a lot of you might even be in the industry, and the practices that we might share, there is even more detailed information about it. And so, you might have even more information about all of the aspects that we are going to be covering. But as being in, Reiki master teachers with human Reiki and animal Reiki, we know that this is going to be helpful for people. And so we thought we'd spend some time and cover more about having a Reiki business, some of the tips and tricks that we can share, and then, some of the higher aspects of the Reiki business, having a Reiki business as well, or starting a Reiki business. I will say, though, Colleen's had a Reiki business for just about 25 years, right? Just about 25 years. I'm coming up on 10 years working as a Reiki professional. And with having a Reiki practice, even if you have had one for a while, it's always a good thing to revisit. So as I've talked about on here, we have been redesigning our website. And so we've had to look at some of these things, revisit some of these things, and it's really healthy to kind of go in and look at, am I still aligned with my Reiki practice or my Reiki identity, business identity. And is this still me? Because we change so much, especially if we've had a Reiki business for a while. So we found that kind of surprising. Obviously, when we went in and looked at it, when she did this originally, she had her own website, and then I've kind of come in the last 10 years, and it's been a business partner, so we had to refresh it to include me and us as business partners as well. But it's moreover the idea that it's always it can be fun to kind of relook at some of these things, and then also everybody has good things that maybe we wouldn't have thought of. And there's a lot of teachers out there that have courses, or you can have mentors in the Reiki space. There's Pam Allen LeBlanc's book, which is the Reiki business book that you can get on Amazon, where it goes into even more of these topics that you can visit and spend time on. Colleen and I particularly actually really like Reiki business practices. I actually have a business degree. It's something that Colleen and I are super interested in general. We find a lot of creativity in it. We find a lot of inspiration within it, sometimes a little too much inspiration because we squirrel and, who knows where we go with it. But a lot of that is because of the fact that we just find these practices really fascinating. So what we're going to be talking about today is the basics of a Reiki business. So when you're starting, you have decided that maybe as you have another job, you want to start a Reiki business. Maybe you have quit all of that and gone full into it. It comes to each of us so differently. So this week we are going to be talking more about the identity aspects of it. And then in the next few weeks, we'll be talking maybe a little bit more about the details, such as logos, colors, some of the kind of technical things around business, having a Reiki business as well. The first thing when it comes to having a Reiki business is that you have a small business. So you have a lot of the same practices that any 21st century small business has. So you have it's going to be a little different if you have a brick and mortar store because, but you might have that as well as a Reiki business. But as far as a product, you're going to have a service industry. And so with that comes a lot of the same things that having a 21st century business requires. So if you think about a masseuse, if you think about a chiropractor, if you think about an acupuncturist, if you think about those kinds of businesses that we think of as a established industry, those are the kind of service aspects that you will be looking at as a Reiki practitioner as well. Now, one thing with Reiki practitioner is because we can have a distance type business, that is a possibility as well. So some of us may not choose to go that route, but I would think most of us are going to have in-person sessions, try to create and teach classes. So those are the kinds of things that we will, that you will, need to be kind of comparing it to when you think of having a small business. One of the things that Reiki can help us with is we think of Reiki from the spiritual aspect. We think of Reiki from the pain reduction aspect, as we were talking about before we started the recording. But Reiki can also really help us with the practical aspects of business practices. So you have that mental emotional symbol. There's a really good symbol for this. You can go into self-Reiki, Reiki meditations. All of those things are going to help us with these aspects of having a Reiki business. So the other thing is that can be a stress reduction because sometimes these things can be a little stressful when it comes to starting a business or maintaining a business. Help us with our stress reduction when it's tax time, things like that. It also helps us in the higher aspects of our Reiki practices, Reiki businesses. And that's what we're going to kind of be talking about today. So understanding your business identity. What does that look like in the context of a Reiki practice? What is unique about you in the space? What is also, how do you have that message of what Reiki is, of a Reiki business? There is, the identity development. So how are you, utilizing Reiki in the business identity formation as well? So that includes so many different things. It includes the practical formation documents, things like that, but it also includes the spiritual aspects, the messaging aspects, those kinds of parts of it too. And this is where Reiki can really help, because we might have our human version of this, but how do we go into the Reiki energy and hear the higher version of this? Colleen has a really great article that she wrote called The Spirit of Your Reiki Practice. And this is actually a module that we do in Reiki, in Next Step Reiki, that we talk about this, and we really go in depth in the spirit of your Reiki practice. And when it comes to the spirit of your Reiki practice, it may or may not be related to business. So that's one thing to know as well. And you may not be interested in having a Reiki business and you still have a Reiki practice. One thing about being a Reiki business owner is that you will always still have your own personal Reiki practice. And the spirit of your Reiki practice is going to also filter in to your Reiki business. So Colleen has her spirit of her Reiki practice. I have a different spirit of my Reiki practice, and yet that's still going to filter in to our own, or into our businesses, our voice, our identity, who we are, because that message, that part of it also is, a part of relaying that out, because as you use your voice, people are going to be attracted to your voice, and there's space enough for each of our voices. Colleen and I each have our own voice, the way that we look at things, the way we think about Reiki, the way that we practice, the way, so we have each these unique voices. And it's like that quote of, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so each of us have room, in the space to have our own unique voice and our own business identity. So this is a part of what Reiki does. It helps to support us in these aspects, because if we have these higher aspects defined for ourselves, we have these higher answers defined for ourselves, it helps us to relay that onto paper, right? And I use paper proverbially. So onto paper when it comes to all of the different aspects of having a Reiki business. So that is also going to include developing your own self-image, and talk about a place to use Reiki for that self-image, because how we might see ourselves is going to be different than how others see us. And we are a lot of times more critical of ourselves than how we actually are in the world. And so, how do we see ourselves with our true reflection? How do we see ourselves with our own, our actual kind of authentic aspects of ourselves? And so that is another place where we are going to, another place where Reiki is going to help us, and we are going to use that higher guidance or that inner guidance to help translate that onto paper, into our messaging, into the world. So, we are going to have our mission and our vision. So a mission statement, a vision statement, who you are, what you do. You're a business that, for people who, for the purpose of, and some of these things we're going to be doing in the Reiki guided meditation that Colleen is going to lead us through today. So we have that aspect of it. Why are we here? Why were we called to be in business? That would be, I think, one of the biggest things with Reiki energy, is that most of us have a calling that we are brought into Reiki for. So, even if we're not sure why or what that is, especially in the beginning, you look back in retrospect and go, oh, this is why this led me here. And sometimes that is why we revisit these aspects of having our business identity, of looking at our colors, or looking, because those aspects evolve as we are in a Reiki business, just as in any business, that's true for any business. You have major corporations that do rebrands all the time. There's some that don't, and there's reasons for that. That's a whole nother, thing that you can literally take an entire college course on, multiple courses on why different ones do that. But at the same time, listening to Reiki in the beginning can help you to develop this self-image aspect, develop this identity that translates then onto paper. And this is a foundational piece of it, right? Because once you know why you're here, what's inspiring, who your ideal client is, once you know these things, what's unique about you, that's then when you can look at this and go, oh, okay, I am here because I am a nurse that wants to teach other nurses. And so that image is going to be different than, oh, I am here because I was in shamanic work, Reiki came through and then led me into the direction of Reiki. That's going to be a different identity. I'm here because I want to work with animals. That's going to be a different aspect. Those are couple of ones that fit into the shamanic, and the animals fit into Colleen's and I's. For me, it was like, okay, I'm here because I thought I was an entirely different person going into corporate life and realized that I need to be in an entirely different, even lifestyle than that. And, or you are here in a Reiki because you do have like a 9-to-5 job, and you want to start a Reiki business on the side to see where that leads you because you feel a calling and you're not exactly sure. Each of those are going to be unique voices, and each of those are going to have a different look to them, different feel to them, different words, different colors, different, you're going to, with the spiritual aspect, you're going to have kind of a look, because that's going to attract certain people. And then if you're from the nursing aspect, and just the examples that I use, that's going to have, a totally different look. Like it might have a more medical look, whereas the other one's going to have a more spiritual look. And so all of this understanding of who you are, why you're here, is then going to be the foundation of how you translate that to the outside world, how people are able to find you, how people are going to see you. So then we have the idea of crafting your business name, right? We have the trademarks, copyrights, legal considerations. We're going to go over, and that we're talking with this one about with your legal name or your business name. These are some of the things that you have to look into. Is your business name already taken? Are there copyrights on some of the materials that you want to use, or that you're attracted to, or even the things that you put out? Like I come up with a business name, I do have to check that that's not already taken, right? So there are some of those legal considerations, because if somebody has that copyright or that trademark, they are actually legally required to defend it, or they can lose it. So that's something you may not know. So if they find that you are using copyrighted material, even totally not knowing, right? Then they are actually required to send you like a cease and desist, or they can lose the copyright. So there's some of those kinds of aspects of when you're first starting your business, you do have to think about. And I think Colleen's going to talk a little bit more about crafting your business name, some of the details of that. Your mission and vision. There's a lot of really good resources out there on how to do this. What Reiki can do is, again, help you go into the higher aspects and hear it from another level, a deeper level, a really big inner truth level. So there is that aspect. And then what you can do is you can take that and you can narrow it down to some of those tools, some of those templates that people have online about how to craft and create your mission statement and your vision. And those are really helpful because they're a North Star. They're guideposts of how you come back to who you are and what you're doing within your business. And then you're going to have things as your tagline. You're going to have things as in your bio. And then from here, that's when some of the more technical aspects of it start that we're not going to talk about this week. They're going to be like a next couple weeks things. That's branding. That's, they're just a very broad subject. And even all the subjects that I just talked about, there's so much more out there around it. These are just how to get you started, the things that you need to think about. And then, of course, how you can use Reiki to really listen in to that heart intention of yours. I think that most of us start in a Reiki business because we have a heart intention, because there's something that called us in a way to help. There's something inspiring about the community. There's something inspiring about the industry. There is something in a way that like we feel that we need to share from that place of a heart intention, because maybe it can help one person even. And so that's where Reiki can really help you. And then kind of everything flows from there with it. And so we're going to go over some of the we're not very versed in the technical aspects. Those are things that you have to look up, like, LLCs, but we're going to go over some of those things that you have to think about at least. So it can kind of go on the list of like, oh, I've got to think about taxes, some of those kinds of things. But starting here it's like the foundation of the pyramid with it. So Colleen, I know you had some things that you wanted to add to all of this as well.
Oh. I think I will also start with screen sharing this particular article because it summarizes what Robin just talked about and puts the questions that you may be asking yourself. We're going to do some of this in the meditation next, because truthfully, everything we do, even though we may be in a very left brain process of, a business practice, we truly use Reiki to take us deeper inside, to understand things like, why am I in business? What inspires me? Who are my clients? How can I help them? What do I do that helps them? Which is the purpose of the work. So this article, and we're going to go over this again next week, going deeper into some of the things like branding. And when I wrote this article, it really was even before a lot of the technology that's available now. And so that's the other thing that's occurring, is that there are so many updates in technology all the time, that when I started with business, like even this website that we have currently, that was in 2012. And this was a very current website at the time. And now it's outdated. And it's not outdated because of the look of it. Well, that too, but it's more outdated because it can't do what websites can do these days. And so, for instance, right now I need to, I was asked, I'm going to be presenting at the Omega Institute in June. And I was asked to put a landing page on my website about it. And I really just can't do that because anything we do could break it. So our web person keeps saying like, okay, we're hanging on by a thread. And so what that means is that there are always new things showing up. So anyway, what Robin was talking about is defined in this article too. And then we're going to go into some of the things that we're not talking about today, next week, going in more in depth, like where do you find things like your colors? Where do you find photos and images? How do you find out if your business name is already exists, the one that you feel called to, or what if it's a trademarked business name? So some of those things. So you can even see the development of here's my ads that are very different in today's world. I started out with business. And then here's the spirit of your Reiki business article. These are all on our website. So you can find them if you go and there's quite a few others as well. But if you go to the Reiki library right here, this is reikilifestyle.com, and go to Reiki articles. We have a lot of articles about business. Also, William just published another anthology of the Reiki News magazine with articles that were written for Reiki News magazine. So that's another resource. A lot of the resources I find truly, I do a lot of research on YouTube. I just rabbit hole it. I may not even know the question I want to ask, but for instance, things like how to create an effective business name. I might put that into YouTube. What is a tagline? I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff when I started, and YouTube didn't exist when I started with all of it. And social media didn't exist when I started all of it. But the very first step to me is to really start working with the Reiki energy for these topics. So, but then you have the practical aspect. And here's one of the things I want to remember to say. One of the quotes that William told me years ago, back in like 2003, 2004, talking about business, is definiteness of purpose, sustained over time, always produces results. And sometimes you can be like, I am so tired of the definiteness of purpose sustained over time. I need the results. And it is an ongoing process. It's something that we do every day. Fortunately, like Robin said, we happen to like business practices. I've been self-employed since I was 26, I think. I stopped working for veterinarians at that time and have been self-employed ever since. Robin, I see you unmuted. Did you want to add
Go ahead.
something?
I was going to say something after.
Okay. So that is the first thing to know, is all of it takes time. And so to me, the very first step is to just start. I asked Karen Harrison that. We were doing a whole process of talking about, business practices and, writing articles together and doing presentations and things together. And I said, well, what's the first thing you do if you're going to start a Reiki business? And she said, get a table. It just cracked me up because I was like, oh, that's like right at the beginning. Of course, that was back when everything was only in person. And so, but to me, the first step is to just start. And where do you just start? So the first step is in letting people know who you are and what you do and how what you do helps them. So that's what they want to know. They want to know, how what they do helps them. And those are called pain points. So that's another thing you can look up on YouTube, how to define Reiki pain points, or you can start to write it down. Who are the people that I know? So for instance, some of you are working with very physical injury, physical pain. Some of you might be working with more spiritual injury, spiritual pain. So you're going to be thinking about your ideal client. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. And you're going to be thinking about, well, what's going on in their lives? And this is general, but you do bring it into a focus. One thing that happens too often is we want to reach everybody. So it really is more helpful to bring your focus in. So that's the first place to start. Then the next thing to that you may want to think about is, what is your business name? And that part of it for me took quite a while. I started off with my first business name was The Color of Reiki, and I loved it. And that came because I had worked with a 5-year-old boy with autism, and he was very non-functional when I gave him Reiki. In one session, he became high functional. And he used to say to his mother, he was nonverbal and he became verbal. And he used to say to his mother, "Mom, take me to the color doctor," because everything he saw with Reiki was all about color. And I'm sure, many of you have that experience that people talk about that. I just saw the most amazing colors. And so I decided that was my business name. Well, it looked weird in print. It looked like the color Oh Freaky. And so it was like, and everybody kept going, well, now what's your name again? And why, so it was meaningful to me, but it didn't really connect to who I was speaking to. So then I actually had a good friend that said, I channeled your business name. It's Reiki Lifestyle. Well, it's easy to spell. It's easy to remember. And it was way back when. So it was still available as a .com, which is another one that, people run into, is now your domain names and things like that. But going back to your business name, one of the things you might think about is, are you going to use your personal name, or are you going to have like a business name? Like I had decided, because I was thinking about, am I going to be Colleen Benelli Reiki, or am I going to be Reiki Lifestyle? And, really had to kind of go into that whole thought process and decided on Reiki Lifestyle. And I'm so glad that I did, because at the time that I chose that, Robin was doing something completely different. She was off at college. She was in a completely different mindset and field. And now I look at it and think, well, how nice that Reiki Lifestyle allowed her to come in as a business partner, and it wasn't just my name. I would have had to rebrand or redo something for it to include her. So then the other thing that we're going to talk about, and I actually want to kind of stop talking because the meditation that we're going to do is a little bit long, to go into asking you some of these questions while you are in really fully engaged with the Reiki energy. But the other one I wanted to bring up is, what is a tagline? I had no idea what that even meant. So I was working with my niece, actually at the time, Summer, her name's Summer Walters now, but Summer Benelli, and she helped me define it. And she's the one who came up with my original tagline, which was living the light of joy. I had no idea what that meant. I was like, okay. She said, everything I hear you say, this is your tagline. It's like, okay. So I kept asking. I used it, but I didn't really understand it until years later, when it started to kind of coalesce: Reiki Lifestyle, living the light of joy. And all of it then helped me. It kind of formed my own, my own identity, I guess, as I was forming its identity. And that's where that Spirit of Reiki article is helpful, because it takes you to that meditation and that self-reflection. So, like Robin said, this is such a big subject, and we only have a little bit of time here to talk about it. And so we know that, like, Pam LeBlanc is teaching classes in business, and also Jenny Stinson in Idaho, and those are online as well. We can put some of those names in our YouTube description, and other people. Some of the other places to go for business information is sba.gov. They have a lot of free tutorials, free resources. Also, community colleges in your area have a lot of good resources too. So, Robin, I see that you unmuted.
That was what I was going to add. I'll not add from earlier. That's what I was going to add, and somebody had mentioned it in the chat too, reminding that they also have a lot of times they have centers and courses that you can do at community colleges for small business.
That's how I started. Was my local community college, Mount Hood. They had, and they're not like accredited courses. They're more like night classes and courses. So people that are teaching them individually. One of the really helpful ones was how to have a home-based business and what that actually means, and all of the different things that come with that. So that was another aspect of that too. So anyway, I know we went through it really fast. So it's like we could only brush on each of the topics. But what we actually want to do is go into the meditation and give you the opportunity to write down some of these things while you are in the meditation. So you can do some automatic writing, again, free writing. Just put your pen to paper and let it write. Try not to evaluate. If you get one word, that's fine. If you get 20 words, that's fine, however it comes through. But even if we can't go through all of it today, it will get you started on your process of how you can do this, because you can do your own self Reiki, sit down, ask yourself some of these questions that are in that article and go through them and just do some automatic writing with it. And we do this regularly. So it's not like every 3 months or something, but we do it pretty regularly, where we come back and we look at it all to see if are we still in alignment with what our purpose is and what it is that we're doing. So